Welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Melanie Curtis.
And I'm Jason Moletsky.
Thank you, legit, for joining us today.
Yeah, our mission is living and learning, laughing and loving together with you.
We're here to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust, trusting the entire journey.
Yeah, and on that journey, we often talk about plant medicines, psychedelics, and other avenues of healing. When we do, we are sharing for informational purposes only. We're not doctors or therapists, and we don't promote doing anything illegal.
Inside us all, we have a deep, powerful knowing. We encourage curiosity, healing, and exploration of this consciousness.
Damn straight. Together, our handle is trustthejourney.today. Individually, you can find her at melaniecurtis.com and me at jasonmoletsky.com.
Thank you all again so much for being with us. On to the show.
Melanie Curtis.
That's the perfect way. Jason
Yeah.
Moletsky.
Welcome to the show.
In the house.
Hey, everybody.
The proverbial house. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Why we're laughing is because basically 7 seconds ago, I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about today. And Jay was like, how about this? And it started to count down to recording. So here we are.
So one of our favorite themes, one of the ones that has served us so well, and one of the ones we see our audience really engaging and really appreciating is our therapy sessions. So it's something that we've done many times over the course of the show, and something we've decided to continue doing with regularity, both for your value and for ours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, God, I get so much value out of our therapy sessions. It's interesting, right? Like the notion of having an actual therapist, of course, matters. And the notion of having friends and our support team that maybe are not the professional in the professional role, but can actually meet us in a depth of conversation that really supports us, that's a big deal because not every friend or family member can do that, and that's okay, right? We just have various and varied and different skill levels and skill sets and focuses in our lives. I used to really get like, I don't know, it was sort of like I had an expectation in a blind spot of mine that I had this hope or this expectation that everyone, would be able to meet me and support me with the same level of skill and depth that I was seeking or needing. And once I really kind of made peace with that, with other folks, I could just love the people in my life that I love so dearly and not hold them to a standard or level. And I don't mean that in a bad sense, but just like not need from them something that they genuinely could not provide me. And that's okay. Like that has really like helped heal a lot of those relationships, for me, which has been a really good thing. And then I go into these spaces where people can meet me with that depth of support, and I get it from there.
It's an expectation, right? It's arriving with this expectation of this skill, of this like, you got to meet me here kind of thing, or I need you to meet me here, versus that quote, and I don't know who it's attributed to, but we can only ever meet people where they are, right? I wanted to mention the weekend just passed. And I had a call unexpectedly on Sunday morning, and I get these calls once in a while. It's from one of our sponsors, one of our guests, one of our family, one of our besties, Miss Shannon Moorhead. And she messaged me. She's like, hey, you got time for a chat? And we were like 2 hours and 25 minutes on the phone. which is that's like the nature of a therapy session, right? It's like a friend's like, get time for a chat. And you're like, a chat. And then you're like 2+ hours of a phone call, right? Where you're just sharing and listening and receiving and the whole process. And, Mel and I were chatting before we started this episode. We're like, we want to keep this one to that 55-minute range because that's what you get when you go into the office, right? Like if you go for a therapy appointment, you've got 55 minutes because you got intake and output, if on either side of the call or the appointment, and
Yep.
you got to be summarized in it. You've got to get to what you want to share, what needs to be shared, what needs to be talked about, and also keep it succinct. Also keep it to the point, because it's not just endless blah, 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 blah. Listen to me forever and ever and ever. Right. And that skill, the development of the skill of honing, like actually listening to our intuition about like, what is it that I need to talk about? This concept, this doesn't come super quickly. It takes a lot of practice of doing therapy with some regularity before we're able to walk into our appointment or show up to our Zoom call or do whatever, to sit down to the call and go, all right, this is what's actually going on for me this week. And
Yeah, for
pretty
sure.
much try to dive straight to it. Right.
Yeah, definitely. I do that with my coaching clients as well. So it's, we're calling this a therapy sesh, but therapeutic spaces exist with lots of different facilitators and held containers that are created and cultivated around this notion of support. And so, yeah, oftentimes with my coaching clients, I'll ask them quite deliberately, what would you like to talk about today? Like, of course, but meaning like, is there something that's alive for you that's coming to the surface, that's more top of mind, that's more obvious to you, that you'd like to talk about or address in our time today? And not every time does a person bring something forward. Sometimes they're like, oh, I'm not really sure. And I can always bring something forward because I'm that version of teammate for them. But it's always I think, generous and useful thing to invite that sharing first, because it allows the person to go, and check in. What is there for me? If I could get something out of today's call, what would it be? If I'm being, checking in with myself and being honest.
So I'll jump on a kind of some process that's been working really well for me lately, is really, and this comes as a result of teachings that I've received, which is to start my day with a meditation, even if it's a super short 5 or 10 minute meditation, like really just right after waking up, instead of just reaching for the phone or picking up, making a cup of coffee or like just going task oriented and just, or unconsciously going about the start of the day. One of the really big things that I've made a practice of is I'll check the time, I'll look at the sun, I'll take a second, and I'm like, how are you? How are you feeling? Like asking myself, like, how are you feeling right now? Oh, I'm feeling pretty tired from yesterday, or I'm sore, I've got some pain, or I feel pretty good this morning, or I'm feeling anxious, like I need to hurry up and get started on something that feels like it's, I'm late to get on it, or so. And just kind of like notating where I'm at as I begin the day, and then giving myself grace and tenderness around whatever that is. So if I'm feeling like I've got a lot on my plate and I really got to get after it this morning, great. But I'll still just pause and acknowledge that's how I'm feeling. And the best way for me to get to really executing that day, if that's what I need, is to take more time and to be more relaxed about it, right? Rather than to like jump out and run after it, is to be like, the most effective way is to just be chill here for a second and just allow myself a bit of grace and go, yep, you're going to have a very busy day today. And then recognize that I don't need to run. I don't need to take off. I don't need to I can just move a little bit slower. And I'm going to quote, I just was re-listening to the episode we mentioned in the last episode, which was Tim Ferriss with Elizabeth Gilbert. And I was just re-listening to it this morning because I pulled so much from it the first time and I wanted to glean and make a couple little notes and stuff. And the quote that she said was, the most relaxed person in the room is the one who wins the fight. And I was like, and she's like, yeah, martial artists know this and athletes know this. And I was like, fuck yeah, I know this. I totally know that when I am cucumber cool, that I am going to execute and I am going to do really, really well. So I'm going to hand you the mic. I just wanted to share, how do I show up to a day, my own therapy day, with that posture of open readiness.
Yeah. You know what's funny is it's one thing to have the spaces where there's another human being supporting us. We are here cultivating all these skills, all this awareness in service to our growth, our healing, our life experience that we want to have, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I'm bringing that up because this book here, it's called The High Performance Planner. There's this guy, Brendan Burchard. Have I mentioned this to you yet?
I believe you have. Today? I believe you've mentioned this once before, but please refresh us.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I mentioned it on the podcast, but I want to briefly touch on it because I've been using it every day for the last 2.5, maybe 3 months. And what I'm loving about it is that it is a self-coaching tool, meaning a lot of times when I'm in my existence, I have coaching skills and I deploy them quite well with other folks, but I don't necessarily deploy them as well with myself, which is a very common thing. And so this tool is helping me do that better, which I like. I wanted to point to that because a lot of what I've written down, it depends on the day, but one of the things it asks a lot of it's one of the questions. I'm going to share it here. If I was a high performance coach looking at my life from a high level, I would tell myself to remember that ... Stuff like that, those types of prompts. I would know today was a great success if at the end of the day I did, said, or felt this ... And so it sets me up, if one word could describe the kind of person I want to be today, then that word is, and why I chose it is why. So for example, today I wrote relaxed. Relaxed.
Funny, I thought calm was the word that came to my mind when you read that. Yeah.
I wrote relaxed, and I've written relaxed many different times because of exactly what you shared. Now, here's something. This is a share that I definitely want to put into the space because I know listeners have heard me talk about this ongoing struggle with food and sort of bad food and feeling sort of like having addictive behavior and sensibilities around that. Anyway, a lot of you also know that I haven't coached skydiving in a long time, meaning I coach it virtually and I have a group and all that stuff, but meaning I haven't gone to a skydiving facility and coached skydiving in person, doing skydives with people for 7 years. It's been a long time because I got burned out. I just really didn't want to do it. And I was really clear and felt great about holding that boundary and just, skydiving in the ways that I wanted to skydive. All that's good. Anyway, fast forward, I got invited to do this event at Skydive Cross Keys this last weekend, and I actually wanted to do it, which was very cool. It was I checked in with myself multiple times, yada, yada. And so I actually said yes to this event. So last weekend, I went and I did that. And I felt very relaxed the whole time. I really I made the right choice. I enjoyed it. I don't necessarily think I'm going to do tons of that work, but I felt really great about it because it was fun. I felt relaxed. I know I added value, met some new people, saw old friends, all those good things. Where this is going is even though I enjoyed it and even though I wanted to do it, it's still extremely hard to do a lot of skydives in one day and to be on for 2 full days in a row, talking to people as extroverted and as much in love with people as I am. It's still a lot of work and it's a lot of energy. And so what happened relative to my food thing is that I absolutely had the collapse thing of, I'm going to do this really hard thing. So fuck it. I'm just going to eat whatever I fucking want to. And I'm not joking, Jay. I went off the rails so hard with my food. I ate candy. I ate crappy pepperoni. I ate bad breakfast sandwiches. I had donuts. Like, it was terrible.
Did you pay for it?
Well, yeah. The night I got home, I was more just like, I feel like I'm going to be sick, like just, the mental thing. But why I wanted to bring this up relative to our therapy session is that I've been working on this, and this is a normal thing too, is that things are not solved in one conversation with your therapist. Things are not solved in one quality conversation with your friend. Things are not solved by one tool. And so that addict behavior that I see with myself relative to food, what I noticed this weekend is that it is very much collapsed with doing hard things. Now, you know me, I love doing hard things. The other day, I was doing some other hard thing, don't even know what it was, forget. And I was committed to not eating like shit. And I felt in myself how absolutely resistant to doing the hard thing I was if I couldn't eat like shit. And so I was like, I gotta disentangle this stuff, right? It's like, if I do the hard thing, I get to do this really other thing that's not healthy and not good for me. And so that's part of my work relative to this food stuff. The sponsor of today's episode is Great Spirit Farm. Yes. Love having Great Spirit Farm with us, and specifically their Ayahuasca microdose tincture. It is a natural MAOI antidepressant and anti-anxiety. Great Spirit Farm describes the feeling as a warm hug. It can help you access deep creativity, flow, intuition, and improve vivid dream recall, which actually has totally been my experience.
So what is exactly in the bottle is the ayahuasca vine itself. So this is a tincture extraction, double extraction tincture that contains the Banisteriopsis caapi vine. Now, the particular vine that this has been extracted from has been growing in Florida now for over 25 years. And the ayahuasca vine does not contain DMT, so that makes this tincture 100% legal in all 50 states.
Yeah, Great Spirit Farm recommends starting with 1 to 3 dropperfuls and increasing your dose gradually from there until you feel the effects. There are no known contradictions with antidepressants, and always check with your doctor and only take as directed.
And what's really great about what Great Spirit Farm is doing is they're making sure that 10% of all the sales are returned to the Shipibo tribe, honoring the medicine's indigenous roots with active reciprocity. Now, if you want to try this tincture out for yourself, you can go to the website. That is ayadose.com, AYADOSE.com, and you can enter our discount code TTJ10 to get 10% off your order. Again, that's ayadose.com and all caps TTJ10 to get 10% off your order. You talked about that in the past with your going into the city behavior of like every time you go into the city, you get some bad food. And I can totally relate to that because I have the same thing. I was in city yesterday and I'm like, I'm just going to get something because I generally cook for myself like 95% 5% of my meals I cook for myself. And I was in the city and I'm like, I'll just go get something. And as I'm scrolling, looking for an option to like, where am I going to get something from? I'm realizing I'm like, I don't actually want any of this stuff because it doesn't meet my standard of like what I would make for myself right now in my kitchen. And I'm traveling in my van right now. So I literally have my fridge in my kitchen right there. So what's the behavior pattern is I'm just being lazy, avoidant, and I'm leaning into that. Like I'm in the city, so I get to go get something bad. And then I decided, I'm like, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to get my yogurt and blueberries and nuts, and I'm going to have a little breakfast here, and I'm going to grab a coffee, and we're good. You know?
Good for you.
Yeah. So I hear you there.
Yeah, not easy stuff. I don't feel guilty about it, to be truthful. I'll tell you why, is that I know I'm in the work. Like I have a lot of compassion for myself. Like, yeah, I struggled a little bit that Sunday night being exhausted after doing that working weekend and making those sort of unhealthy choices. But there's also a part of me that was like, because fascinatingly too, I woke up Monday morning and I have absolutely no desire to eat like shit. None, nothing.
Right.
I'm back to tracking I'm back to tracking my food. Like I feel great. So it's very interesting. I'm more like very much bringing mindful self-awareness to the iterative breakdown so that I can, figure it out in a deeper sense, as opposed to just being like, oh, there it is again, and just have compassion for it, but not make an effort around it.
Am I eating so similar, right? Or I have a fantastic diet, and I would say there's two things in my diet that I like, maybe yes, no. One's a sure no. It's sugar, right? Like sugar shows up for me in these if there's a part of my psyche that reaches for it, it's a very kind of weak version of me that like needs to be held or like needs to be cared for, or needs to be coddled. Like it's a version that's like really, I feel like a young boy, like very young child, in relationship to that neediness when it comes to sugar. And the other one is caffeine. And I'm not an extremely bad caffeine user. I'm very measured with it. It's very quantified because I don't like the outcome of having too much caffeine or having it outside of a time frame that doesn't work for me, for my sleep. So the caffeine's very regulated, and I've had a lifetime of gastrointestinal challenges. So putting in an acidic compound like caffeine, I'm going to be really cautious, because the repercussion for me of gassiness, bloatedness, not feeling well, all that, it totally counterbalances in a negative way the positive aspects that I might realize from caffeine. And I'll say, I do really like, and it's really works, is using caffeine as a pre-workout. Like when I time my caffeine input so that it is hitting it's like an hour before I'm going to be at peak exercise. If I take my caffeine so that I'm arriving to the gym and getting started right as my caffeine's ramping up, that really fucking works. There is no question that I am pushing more weights and I am more focused and deliberate and not wasting an ounce. I am like getting it done when I've timed that correctly. But for example, this call, if I were to have had any more caffeine than I've had this morning, I'm going to have a hard time sitting in this chair, right? It's going to be really difficult to stay focused and stay on point. So here's the thing, right? I have that piece of me that wants, needs, uses. Ooh, are these addictive qualities, right? Needs or uses, right? So sugar, do I need it? Like as far as like cane sugar? Fuck no. And does it do me any value? No, it is actually really counter productive for me to intake cane sugar or corn syrup or any of these processed sugars, because my joints inflame really badly and my brain chemistry goes down the toilet. It's amazing how poor I feel cognitively after allowing myself to have some sugar. So if I grab that donut or if I grab that sugary treat, especially if I have it in the morning, then my whole pattern of like how productive, how focused, how conscious am I of my state of being, it wobbles. Like the pendulum swings really hard. And I
Yeah.
see that I still do it. I still, now, good job, Jay. There's the positive self-talk is I don't do it very often. It's very
Yeah.
rare. And the most of the time, like I was talking about, I'll see myself kind of, I've just removed it from all my kitchen. It doesn't exist there. And when I'm in a tempted space, I'm like, no, Jay, you know what this is going to be like. So you're not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, I guess I'm just riffing on and relating to that kind of shared struggle of our,
Yeah.
this like putting things in our mouth that are, ugh,
Yeah,
gosh.
totally. Totally. You know, the reason I bring this up, right? Because this isn't an episode about physical health and this and that, but like it's all connected. You know what I mean? The emotional, relational, the emotional healing that one does in a therapeutic space. It's like the more we can bring forward what is true, regardless of what it is, the more power we have in that space to make it useful for ourselves. And so that's why I'm very forthright when I fuck up, as it were, flail. And again, not in a judgmental sense. Like I want it to be known, right? I'm not afraid of being known for that stuff because I feel so good about being committed to my growth and my healing. But also, I've cultivated this deep, deep compassion for myself as a human being, a fallible human being. That is something I've worked to have, and it's there for me. Like that is there for me. Like that is a really, really important part of my mental and emotional health that I have cultivated over the years for myself, with myself. One thing, a couple of things I want to quickly share about the sugar thing that have been helping me. Not clearly, I'm not clearly quote unquote there yet. Whatever there is, that
There
song
is
you
no
shared the
there.
other day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
there
is
is
no
no
there.
there.
Yeah.
Um, Two things. One of my friends said, think of sugar at like alcohol, like it's going to mess with your body the same way, which helps me because I already don't drink alcohol. I've had a very successful quote unquote experience with deciding away from alcohol. 7.5 years in on that for myself. So that's been sort of helping to try to attach sugar to that idea. I'm working on it, but that's one. The other thing is this question of when I'm about to put something in my mouth, which sounds hilarious. That's what she said. Is this healing or is this harming? Like, is this healing me or is this harming me? Because a lot of the eating like crap stuff for me also feels in large part like a self-sabotage behavior that I don't really know what it's about yet, but I can see it relative to like the work I'm doing with the keynote speaking and stuff like that. I have this subtle thread of knowing that it feels like a self-sabotage behavior. And so I'm working on digging that up some more.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, do you feel like when you reach for, and then this is a question for my own psyche as much as it is for you,
Sure.
do you feel like when you reach for that sugar or whatever that bad food is, that self-sabotage behavior, that in some way this is a version of avoiding feeling something else, right? That we're using that thing. I'm like, I'm going to immediately feel and be with whatever sweetness or whatever saltiness or whatever other thing it brings me to, than whatever emotion I was about to feel or afraid of feeling
So yeah, here's the answer to that. This is so two other things about this, the way I'm digging into this for myself is I'm going to bring this again to my next ayahuasca 3-day ceremony. And I'm going to ask ayahuasca very directly about like, this food demon or this food situation again. So that's one. And I'm going to intentionally do more meditation around what might be underneath. So what it actually feels like for me now is I see and feel the high performer, performative, high achieving, crushing it, doing the hard thing part of myself, which is quite good, but also one of my strong suits, which in a way, and I feel this is what's happening with the food stuff, is it's keeping me from something underneath even that, which is another thing I've been working on in my ayahuasca and my deeper healing stuff, is like pulling on this thread of performative pressure. But I'm not fully clear on what that is yet. So does it feel like I'm avoiding an emotion right now? No, it doesn't. But there's a cognitive, intuitive knowing that there's something else there that I haven't yet discovered that's sort of living in a blind spot. So yes and no.
Interesting that you said that. Thank you for your answer. I actually had this on my list as one of the top things that I wanted to investigate and work on in my most recent ceremony, which was just over a week ago now. So full transparency, I've spent the better part of the last week in deep integration, allowing myself time and space away from the busyness of the world and life and interactions. And I've been very calculated and conscious about how I've been moving through my own life's journey by taking pause. And I've spent about 5 days parked with an absolutely just world-class view of these beautiful mountains. I found this great spot where there was an awesome reception, so I could be engaged and productive and work on the things that are important to me in my life without needing to be interacting with random energy, as in, strangers, knocks on the door, distractions, all this kind of stuff. And giving myself 5 days without moving. Like I literally didn't go exercise. I didn't go hiking. I didn't go fly my paraglider. I wasn't out base jumping. I wasn't doing cardio or lifting weight. I was literally just like sitting still for 5 days and taking time to like deep process and integrate and realize some of the value from the ceremonies that had taken place a couple of days earlier.
Yeah.
And I had taken this food piece with me, and it's been really obvious. And it's interesting how that medicine works, because I'll share just kind of a summarized version of how that ceremony went for me. Is like I have been practicing now for almost 8 years, and I have tended to learned I learned something along the way, and it said I should have an intention. I've seen a lot of success for myself if I really like feel into what am I struggling with? What's fucking hard for me right now? Like, what is causing me pain, or like where's an underlying trigger for things that I'm seeing occurring in my life, and just trying to like look underneath everything all the time and kind of reveal the problems. Like, oh, I'm fat. No, that's not the problem. The problem is I binge eat when I'm stressed. Well, why are you stressed is one of the questions. And then how is binge eating a coping mechanism? And how did it occur? How did it get there? And then how can we change that habit? Like those are the kind of like intention that I would bring, right? So I made a short list of intentions for myself, and I discussed them with my therapist team, which is my trusted besties who are on the same journey with me, who are looking to optimize their life's journey, right? And I reach out and I'm like, hey, this is what's been on my mind. This is how I've been feeling. So I've been struggling with. This is what I want to spend time thinking about and working on in the medicine and in myself. And then medicine comes along and it's just like, I'm gonna bitch slap you. You think this little, intellectualized idea of a intention, there's the intellectual mind, right? The emotional body, right? The heart energy, right? The gut, right? The gut and the soul, like the oversoul, right? All these different parts of being. And the intellectual mind wants to draw it, wants to make all the decisions, wants to think everything, right? And at a much deeper level, my body's like, hey, over here, dummy. You are totally ignoring me. And I've been trying to get your attention for ages, and I've been really struggling with some physical ailments, condition, got some stuff that's been bothering me for quite some time, and it's become more and more relevant to my life and in the foreground. And so those underlying conditions have been really revealing themselves to me in a powerful way and kind of pushing the intellectual mind off the plate and being like, yeah, listen more deeply to how you're really feeling right now. Like really take stock of what your physical condition is right now. How are you truly feeling? Not how do you want to think you want to feel, right? Like not to like create a feeling of like where I want to be, right? So try not to get ahead of myself in this like, oh, if I work on my eating, I'll feel better, because this was on my list, because I know I still have these sugar binge cravings, right? And I'm like, I want to address that because I'm really looking to optimize the physical body. And the
Yeah.
physical body is like, that's just a symptom. That's just a symptom. If we want to work on the other pieces, we really need to like shut up for a minute, feel into, instead of thinking into, feel into where we are right now and really take stock of the condition right now.
Yeah.
And so all the stuff I put on my plate to work on, all that got pushed off the plate, and none of that was what I spent my nights in ceremony working on. It was completely about my physical experience in the body. And again, I'll quote Elizabeth Gilbert. She's like, who wants to have a body? Like, who wants to be in a body? This sucks. I love that quote because it's one that I think all the time. I'm like, man, this is hard.
Right.
Being human is hard.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that share. Thank you, Jay, because I feel like it's very much landing for me in the sense that I just wrote down, it makes me think of the chat we just had with Isra Garcia about and how we touched on stillness, the power of stillness. That was something I wrote down that resonated from that conversation. It's resonating again today. And this notion that I've been ignoring my body. There is for me something there. There's a disconnect between loving my body, because one of the things I noticed the other day when I was meditating on this and reflecting on this sugar food thing is one of the sentences, the verbal things that comes up in my mind when I'm about to make the bad choice, because I'm like, I need to get more intimately acquainted. I want to get more intimately acquainted with that moment to understand what's occurring in that moment. And so anyway, you
So you can
mentioned
recognize it,
Shannon.
right?
Yeah. You mentioned Shannon earlier in the show, and I shared this with her because I wanted to not lose it. But what I recognized was I will say, I don't care. Like, oh, I just don't care. Like I'm too hard. Like, oh, I don't care. I'm going to just eat the thing. I need a break, like some sort of like something. And I'm recognizing the connection of that I don't care as it relates to my physical body, right? Because if I really cared on a deep level about my physical body, I wouldn't poison it with stuff that I know is really, really bad for me. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of complexity here. So I'm not saying, oh, that's the be all end all insight and I've solved it. But there is something there for me around wanting to cultivate this deeper care for my physical form. The last thing I'm going to share relative to this, and before I pause again, is in one of my ayahuasca ceremonies, one of my most powerful ones. I've probably shared this briefly, but this is relative to the body and your share about how your ceremony was very physical. Is that
Somatic. Yeah.
like in one section of this particular ceremony, it felt like ayahuasca was shaking me out like a rug. Like, I'm not joking. Like, you know how you flap a rug and you get
Yeah.
the dirt out of it? I was like, my whole body, I was just like shaking and like flapping against the ground, like just sort of shaking to like shake this energy out of me. And I know animals do this, right? This is a way when they're under stress, they shake it off and then they move on. And that happened to me in one of my ayahuasca ceremonies. So there's some thing where I might go and bring intentionality to that as a method also.
Yeah. Then no doubt the animals really can teach us something in that regard, right? Like we tend to kind of shrug off our body's interesting or unusual ways of managing, mitigating, releasing, letting go of different energies or factors, however way you want to describe them, and that somatic movement of shaking, dancing, releasing, it's so powerful in as a practice. I just made a note for myself. I'll be super. Here's a weird transparency. I keep shifting in my systems of my to-do list, basically, right? I'll use a Todoist app for a while, and I'm really good at it, and then I'll shift, and then I'll have a notepad, and I'll use a written notepad for a while, and I'll scratch things off, and then I switch to the notes app on my phone for a while, and I just keep, interestingly, like as time, and I don't judge myself for it. I'm like, okay, that's the way you need to do it right now to get it done. And this morning I wrote in Thursday yoga, right? Like I put it on it's the second from the top of my list of things I need to make sure I do, because that somatic movement practice of opening, extending, releasing, and accepting a change in the body, right, is so valuable to me. And I'm saying it out loud as like a commitment to myself that I'm going to be there on Thursday morning for that class, because I know how good it is for me, how much better I feel after doing that class.
Yeah. It's like, why is it so hard? Like, why do we like resist physical exercise? And it's a genuine question because it's such a common thing. You hear it from so many people. I don't want to do my workout, or I want to do, oh man, like that's still one that's hanging on, even though a lot of times I'll experience, oh, I feel really good. Like right now I'm riding my bike in the morning and I have quite a lot of ease. It doesn't take a lot for me to get out the door. I think that's in part because of 75 hard, in part because of like dismantling this I don't want to do it mentality. But the I don't want to do it mentality absolutely is still there sometimes for me too.
Yeah. I've had a switch happen just notably this week. I took, say, the last 10 days off of strenuous exercise because my body was really needing some rest and recuperation. And so I did no workouts for the last 10 days, but also, good job to me, for the last 2 years, I've been hyper consistent with going to the gym, not just my actual workouts that I would do that are like cardiovascular, which is hiking or riding or surfing. I've been really good at that for years and years and years. That's easier for me. I find it much easier to grab a pack and head up the hill and go hike and get in a good 30-minute cardio session and then fly back down than it was to grab my stuff, go to the gym and go lift weights for 50 minutes. And what happened, what I've noted in myself is because I've been so consistent with showing up and doing my 2 days a week or 3 days a week of lifting weights is this week I was like, I can't wait to get back in the gym. I'm like, I so am looking forward to going and bench pressing. Like, and at no time in my previous 50 years of being alive have I said, I can't wait to go bench press. In my head, I'm like, I truly look forward to the feeling of doing this because I've done it enough now where it's not a task. It's not something that I have to do. It's
Yeah.
something that makes me, it's just like that sugar hit where like I feel better when I do this, but I actually feel better. Like
Right.
instead of I having this idea that I'll feel better if I do this I'll eat this donut and then I'll feel better from eating it. I actually go, no, if I just head to the gym and go lift weights and I do 2 simple exercises, it's not even freaking hard. It's super simple. I just do 2 exercises for an hour. Then afterwards, I feel way better, like
Yeah.
so much better. It's impressive how simple it is and how effective it is.
Yeah. That's simple, easy, and effective. Because that's part of it, I think, for me, is that if I don't mindfully think about it, I automatically assume, just automatically, not even consciously, but there's an automatic assumption that it's going to be hard. And I mean it in the cognitive sense. Like I'm going to have to figure it out,
Yeah.
So this idea that you just planted this seed for me about I can do 2 exercises and it's simple, that helps.
That's
That
how I've
helps.
made it. That's how I made it functional for myself because the intellectualizing of like, what am I going to do? Even like how many sets and how many reps and how much weight, that's too much thinking for me. I don't want to, I have had to create a system for myself, which makes it so freaking simple that I never have to think about it. And that way I can be very successful at executing because I don't need, and I can't stand, no offense to anybody who loves it. If you're one of those people who loves a highly complex
Yeah.
set of supersetting whatever, go for it. Go fucking crush. But I don't need that much thought in there. I want to I'm just going to do bench press for the next 30 minutes and then I'm going to do curls for the next 30 minutes and that's it. I'm going home, and then next time
Yeah,
I'm going to do pull downs and I'm going to, that's break it down basic,
I love
you know?
that. I love that. That's really useful for me because back to this whole like ignoring the body and giving the body like its due attention, I feel like it's also that overusing of my brain. That's very much a thing I do. I overuse my brain. I use language for everything that I do, So this notion of super simplicity, lifting cognitive load, lifting decision fatigue, all of that sounds like something I need relative to this. Because I know, and peeps, for you guys listening, Jay and I text back a lot in between episodes, and he's been sharing these lifting videos for women getting older, going through perimenopause and menopause, and how important it is to build muscle. And so yeah, I'm doing a lot of bike rides. But I have not been lifting in recent years at all. And I now get it. I'm on board cognitively that I want to start doing that and make it and turn it into something that I like. But I haven't really found the way to do that yet. And so this is helpful.
Let me give you what helped me so much. And I've shared this with a number of other people, but I actually had to kind of extract it. And I got this from an interview between Huberman and Andy Galpin, Dr. Andy Galpin. So Andy Galpin's a fantastic resource for anybody who's looking to understand how the body works and how to build strength and performance. Highly recommend looking up his stuff. He's broke it down into these 4 basic, so simple, oh my God, I can understand this way of thinking. Above your head, pull down. Above your head, push up.
Okay.
Okay. Below the shoulder, push away. Below the shoulder, resist coming towards you.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the abdomen, bend forward, extend.
Mm.
Below the
Mm-hmm.
hips, compress, extend. We're done.
Mm-hmm. Got
That,
it.
like, if you do those, that's it. There's like, you need to do it up and down above your head. It could be pull-ups. It could be dumbbells. It could be anything. It's like above the head, up and down, below the shoulders, forward and back, at the waist, bending, extending, and below the hips, extension and compression.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's it. That's the workout. We're done. And I'm like, oh my God, I freaking get it. Thank you. Somebody finally broke it down to like the most basic form. But even then, he didn't say it that succinctly. I had to like kind of like make notes from, I kept going back and rewinding and listening and making a note, rewind, make a note, rewind, make a note. And like, oh, okay, now I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and for me, this is very clear to me, even in just this conversation, is that my brain is tired. My brain is tired. I have a high quotient of things I am engaged in because I do that. I love making the most out of myself, my life, my creative power, my life force, all the things that we've talked about many times. And that is part of what's holding me back from figuring this out, is because I'm like, too smoked. So honestly, this concept of turning this physical somatic approach into something very, very easy for me that doesn't require me to think, I think is going to be a breakthrough for me, honestly. I do.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been for me. Oh, so I want to touch that breakthrough concept as a touching point. What has been that for me? What has been that that thing hiding underneath that I've been needing to identify for myself? It's like kind of the root cause analysis. What's the root cause of me? And I guess I also heard this question come up, is like, how are you complicit in creating the circumstance that prevents you from realizing your true self, kind of thing? It's also this, like, how do I self-sabotage myself? Like, what's the thing that I'm like ego avoidant? What's this thing that I'm not leaning into, like truly, really like realizing my own potential? And I don't know. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
I was able to take that idea into ceremony and recognize, I'm like, oh, there's something. I had a long conversation with Tucci about this. There's something about just knowing that I know there's something that there's a tripping, like a stumbling block, right? Like there's something that that constantly, I can't say it. I can't name it. I fight with it. I don't know what it is. It's in my subconscious. The fact that it's in my subconscious means I don't know what it is. I can't see it because it's subconscious. It's underneath my consciousness, right? And when I feel that kind of fear, resistance, I'm scared, I don't know what it is, I need to just allow myself to go, I don't need to name it. I don't need to intellectualize it. I don't need to understand it. I don't need to develop a relationship with it. And like all these intellectual concepts of me, need is in some ways me continuing to hold on to it. Right. And I found myself going, let go of all these needs, let go of this need to like call it a symptom or a syndrome or a cause. Like it doesn't need to be you have this condition or this trauma or something that, a pattern, or fucking stop trying to put fucking words on it and just let it all go. And I know if you've been listening to this podcast for any period of time, you've heard me say, let it all go, let it all go, let it all go. And that's one of my biggest lessons from my ceremonies and from my work with Aya, from my meditations, is this idea of let it all go. And I'm really, really happy to say like this 5 days I recently spent alone working on my life goals and working on growing who I am as a person. I felt a huge amount of peace. Fucking peace comes with happiness. Peace and happiness. These things are like peas in a pod, right? I felt peace with working on the things I want to work on in my life without that stumbling block, without that tripping point, without that fear. And as a result of just letting it go, just not naming it.
Yeah.
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 Stoked about
I
that.
love that. I love that. This thread is so resonating for me. Yes, of course, the more umbrella thought of let it all go, but specifically for me, the over intellectualizing, putting language on stuff, just because that's this, again, I look at my strong suit, and I always often go back to something is a poison only based on dose, and so it's very clear to me that because I have this strong suit of being able to put words on stuff with relative ease and use my words to explain my feelings and all that. I know not everyone feels strong doing that. I do feel strong doing that. I have a lot of practice. And that's where I think, because of that sort of weighted thing in my existence, I really do want to, and it's not that this is a brand new concept, but it's just a reminder of going back to that somatic self, the stillness, and the not needing to name something is just as powerful as finding this root idea that is connected to all things or whatever.
100% agree.
Yeah. Well, my friend, we're getting close to our 55 minutes. Look at us.
So typically when I get to this point in the call, we're talking about scheduling the next appointment.
Right, totally.
That's the truth,
Yeah,
right?
totally. It is true.
Yeah, we're like, okay, when am I going to see you next, kind of thing, And I think there's a healthy recognition in referencing that, because there's that in itself says, it's not a one-time, one and done. It's just, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Right? That's life. Just as life. Let's keep living it. So I love talking with you, Mel. I love you. I really appreciate the healthy space that we have curated together that has empowered both of us to feel held and feel safe, to be able to share into our own journeys, and to do so for an audience that hopefully, as a result of our sharing, also feels that is something that they can access and that they can find by either joining the Trusted Journey family or reaching out to one of us individually. All the different avenues of availability through us as Trusted Journey, and all the myriad of options that exist in the world if there's something else that calls to you.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So much gratitude and love for you, my friend, as always, and every one of you listening. If this resonates, cool. Let us know. Let us know what you'd like to hear more from us about. And I do love, Jay, that we're doing this with some frequency, once a quarter, really making sure we do a therapy sesh to model that behavior and model that commitment. But everyone listening, we freaking love you. And that's the truth.
Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone, seriously, for listening, for spending your valuable, valuable time, energy, and heart with us. Every bit of it makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you. We would love it if you could show your support for the show by subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, or follow us on Instagram. You can always click the like button, leave us a comment, or share an episode with somebody directly.
Like we mentioned, every month we host integration coaching circles. So much good work is happening there. You are invited to join us. Go to trustthejourney.today/integration. The Trust the Journey family includes these integration coaching circles and our private Facebook group where we connect and support each other. Join us by going to our website, trustthejourney.today, and click the orange Patreon button.
Yeah, thanks. It's your support and engagement that make the show possible. Thank you. We're here to connect with you. Feel free to DM us anytime on Instagram. We're at trustthejourney.today. Thank you. We love you.
We love you.
Keep laughing, keep loving, and keep trusting the journey.